Hello everybody, Natasha Buttler here, marketing lecturer at JCU, and we are up to week 3 of Marketing Matters, BU1108 and BU2108, and this week we're discussing the marketing environment, social responsibility and ethics. So this particular lecture is taken from chapter 2 of our textbook, and it examines the competitive, economic, political, legal, and regulatory, technological, and sociocultural forces in the marketing environment. First of all, we're going to discuss some environmental scanning and environmental analysis, and 2 general approaches firms use to respond to environmental forces: a passive or reactive approach and a proactive approach. We're then going to talk about competitive forces, focusing on the types of competition and competitive structures. Next, we're going to consider the effect of general economic conditions, consumer demand and spending behaviour, and also the political forces, how they influence business decisions and how businesses might react to them. So there's a whole lot for us to cover. So let's get into it, shall we? So this week, our learning objectives that we need to consider is to be able to explain why it is important to examine and respond to the marketing environment. You're going to be able to understand the nature and types of changes to the market environment. So that's looking at that PEST analysis, the competitive, economic, political, legal and regulatory, technical and socio-cultural. You will be aware of the legal and regulatory forces that guide marketers and understand the differences between self-regulation and legal regulation, and be able to explain why some firms might choose preferentially to choose self-regulation. You're going to be able to describe and explain the 4 dimensions of social responsibility, which is economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic. And finally, explain how to incorporate ethics and social responsibility into marketing strategy. Boy, have we got a jam-packed lecture for you this week, haven't we? There's quite a bit in there. So let's get moving. So when we consider the marketing environment, that consists of external forces that directly or indirectly influence an organization's acquisitions of inputs. So that is human, financial, natural resources and raw materials and information. And it also considers creation of outputs such as goods, services or ideas. Changes to the marketing environment can create uncertainty, threats, and opportunity for marketers. To be able to survive and be able to achieve long-term goals, organizations should continuously monitor the market via the marketing environment, via environmental scanning and environmental analysis. Because marketing operates in a complex, changing environment. Major environmental forces shape marketing opportunities. They pose threats and affect the company's abilities to build customer relationships. Therefore, we need to monitor and read and manage effectively these forces for our business to have continual success. So we must be environmental trend trackers and opportunity seekers out there in the marketplace. So we have the internal environment, and that's all the things that happen inside the company. And usually these are the things that can be controlled or directly impacted on by the company itself. However, though, we've got the external environment, and the external environment can be broken down into the micro environment and the macro environment. And this encompasses the people and the processes that the organization cannot directly control, but yet they may be able to seek to influence them. So let's take that into consideration. We need to remember that is that from the marketing perspective, the marketing mix is about the things that the company can control. But now we're talking about the external environment, and these are the things that impact the business that can't be controlled directly by the organization. So the microenvironment consists of the actors that are really close to the company, and that affects its ability to serve its customers. So this includes things such as the customer itself or the company itself, any suppliers, our marketing intermediaries such as agents, advertising, promotions people. It could be our competitors that we have in there. And it could be the public, which is ordinary people, the general community, and our customer market. So that's our micro environment, which is close to our organisation. But the macro environment, on the other hand, that comprises the largest scale societal forces that influence the micro environment. And that includes things such as demographic, economic, natural, technological, political, and cultural forces. So, for example, aging populations, purchasing power, shortages of raw materials, new and changing products, changes in policies and legislation, as well as cultural forces that affect society's basic values, perceptions, and preferences and behaviours all impact on that macro environment. So both the micro and the macro forces cannot be controlled by the organisation. However, the organisation can take steps to influence how it responds to these factors so it can positively influence them. So it's just about being aware on what's going on outside so that as an organisation we can make best choices to ensure our longevity. To monitor changes in that marketing environment, marketers engage in environmental scanning and environmental analysis. So environmental scanning is the process of collecting information about forces in the marketing environment. So it includes things such as observation, secondary sources such as government, trade, business, and internet sources. And it might also include marketing research as well. Environmental analysis is then the process of assessing and interpreting the information that's being gathered through that scanning. Marketers evaluate the information for accuracy and try to resolve inconsistencies in the data, and they assign significances to the findings. Environmental analysis enables marketers to identify potential threats and opportunities linked to those environmental changes. So marketing managers take two general approaches to environmental forces. Some marketers view environmental forces as uncontrollable and remain passive and reactive to the environment. Others believe that environmental forces can be shaped through economical, psychological, political, or promotional skills. And these marketers are, to a certain extent, rather proactive. To exert influence on environmental forces, marketing managers seek to identify market opportunities or to extract greater benefits relative to costs from existing market opportunities. Political action is another way to affect environmental forces. However, managers must recognise that there are limits on how much environmental forces can be shaped. Now, the marketing environment is always dynamic and it's always changing, and it consists of 6 external forces that directly or indirectly affect how companies serve their customers. So that is the competitive, economic, political, legal and regulatory, technical and sociocultural environment or forces. So we're going to look into those 6 in a little bit more detail now. So first, let's look at the competitive forces. So a marketer generally defines competition as other firms that market products similar to or that can be substituted for our own products in that same geographical area. These competitors can be classified into one of 4 groups. They can be brand competitors, so that is, they market branded products with similar brand features and brand benefits to the same customers at similar prices. They might be product competitors, and that means they compete in the same target market segment, but their products have different features, benefits, and prices. They may be generic competitors, and they provide very different products that solve the same problem or satisfy the same basic customer need. Or finally, there could be total budget competitors, and they compete for the limited financial resources of the same customer. All 4 types of competition can affect the firm's marketing performance, but brand competitors are the most significant because buyers typically see different products of these firms as direct substitutes for what our business offers. So when just one or a few firms control supply, competitive factors exert different sorts of influence on marketing activities than when competitors exist. So a monopoly, for example, exists when a firm offers a product that has no close substitute, making it the sole source of supply. So here in Australia, having a monopoly set up actually isn't legal through the ACCC, and the Australian Consumer Competition and Consumer Watchdog looks out for those sort of things so that we're continuously having a competitive environment where there is multiple businesses that can serve our customers' needs. But in Australia, though, we do have other types of competitive structures. So we do have, for example, an oligopoly, and that exists when few sellers control the supply of a large proportion of a product, such as airlines or fuel, for example. Monopolistic competition exists when a firm with many potential competitors attempts to develop a marketing strategy to differentiate its product. And then we have pure competition, if it existed, would entail a large number of sellers, no one of which could significantly influence price or supply. And, we do have that out there in the marketplace, such as with fruit and vegetables or milk, for example. So this table here is taken from table 2.1, which is out of your textbook, and that provides some further detail on the different characteristics of these competitive structures. So marketers need to monitor the actions of major competitors to determine what specific strategies competitors are using and how these strategies might affect their own. So it's not enough just to analyse available information. The firm must develop a system for gathering ongoing information about its competitors. So we've looked at the competitive forces. Now we're going to look at the political, legal, and regulatory forces of the marketing environment, because those three are really closely interrelated. So although some marketers view political forces as beyond their control and simply react to the conditions arising from those forces, other firms are a whole lot more proactive, and they seek to influence political forces through public protests or campaign contributions. So this is something we saw a lot of during the COVID years in relation to vaccines and checking in. Companies can also participate in the political process through campaign contributions, political action committees, and lobbying to persuade public and or the government officials to favour a particular position in decision making. So next we have the economic forces in the marketing environment, and these economic forces influence both the marketers and the customers' decisions and activities. And there's three economic forces that we'll be looking at in more detail: the buying power, the customer's willingness to spend, and our general economic conditions. So economic forces in the marketing environment influence both marketers and customers' decisions and activities. Buying power is the strength of a person's buying power, which depends on economic conditions and the size of resources, which includes money, goods and services that can be traded in exchange. And these resources enable the individual to make purchases. So the major sources of buying power are income, credit, and wealth. Income, of course, is money received through wages, rents, investments, etc., for a given period. Now, marketers are really interested in the amount of money people have left over after paying taxes, because that's called disposable income, and that's used for spending and for saving. Then we have discretionary income, and discretionary income is the disposable income that is available for spending after saving and the individual has purchased their basic necessities such as food, clothing, shelter, and paid for their utilities. So what have we got left over? Do we have money left over to go and buy that coffee? So what does that look like for us and our buying power? Do we trade up, or do we need to just go for generic products? Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Okay, a little barking fits over there. Now, we also too, with our economic forces, is we need to consider people's willingness to spend. So even though customers may have, or the public has, discretionary income, are they willing to spend it? And this is their inclination on whether to buy because of an expected satisfaction for a product. And to some degree, it is related to their ability to buy. So willingness to spend is affected by a couple of factors. Well, it's affected naturally by their buying power, so what's their discretionary income looking like? It's also influenced by a product's price and its value. And of course, value is what we put on something. It's also influenced by the amount of satisfaction that is already received from a product already owned. So do I already own this? And what's my level of satisfaction here? Do I need to trade up to a new car? But probably the biggest one that impacts our willingness to spend is our expectations about the future, our expectations about our future employment, our expectations around income levels, prices, family size, and general economic conditions. So a person's willingness to spend is definitely influenced on those things. So if you consider, if you're planning to expand your family, you may rein back in on your discretionary income, knowing that you may be going to lose an income or be down to one income for a period of time and have additional expenses. Or perhaps you're saving for a house. Or perhaps it is just the general feeling of the economy that I'm not so sure about the future of my job. Am I going to have a job again next week? Will I be able to pay for my bills? Changes in the general economy conditions affect and are affected by supply and demand, buying power, willingness to spend, consumer expenditure levels, and the intensity of competitive behaviour. Fluctuations in the economy follow a general pattern often referred to as the business cycle, and this traditionally consists of 4 stages. During the period of prosperity, unemployment is low, total income is relative high, and that combination generally ensures that we have high buying power. But then on the flip side of that, a recession is when we see unemployment rise and total buying power declines, and the associated pessimism often stifles consumer and business spending. A prolonged recession may become a depression, and we really don't want to see that. And that's a period which unemployment is extremely high, wages are very, very low, and total disposable income is at a minimum. And really, consumers lack any confidence in the economy. However, though, then we move back into recovery. And during that stage, the economy moves from depression or recession back into prosperity again. So we recover from being in that downturn. And that business cycle continuously happens. It always happens that we go through that period of prosperity, and then we hit that peak, and then we hit the downturn, and we go into that recession period, and then, or depression even, and then we come back to the recovery of prosperity again. Being aware of the business cycle can enhance the success of marketing strategies. So for example, during prosperity, marketers may expand their product offerings or intensify distribution and promotional efforts. But during economic downturns, well, we need to really focus on how we spend our money and ensuring that customers, that we're promoting the product's value and the utility, and so that customers understand the precise functions of our products. So just because we're in an economic downturn definitely doesn't mean that that's a time that we stop spending from a marketing perspective. Lots of businesses expect to stop spending, but really it's a really bad strategy to do that, because we're wanting to continue to remind customers that we're still here and that we're working with them through hard times. So then when those good times, that prosperity comes back, we're already top of mind, or we continue to be top of mind with our customers. So we've had a look at our economic forces, our political forces, and our competitive forces. Let's now have a look at our sociocultural forces. And our sociocultural forces are the influences in a society and its cultures that bring about changes in attitudes, beliefs, norms, customs, and lifestyles. Changes in a population's demographic characteristics such as age, gender, race, ethnicity, marital and parental status, income and education all have a significant bearing on relationships and individual behaviour because they lead to changes in how people live and consume our products. So, for example, the most recent census data released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics identified that for the first time ever, and within a very small margin, our numbers of millennials, that's those people aged between 25 and 39 years of age, have actually caught up to our baby boomers as the largest generational group here in Australia. So if we need to consider that, if we're considering that type of information, well, as our two biggest markets, how do we go about attracting those customers to us? We also too, according to latest industry reports, immigration is increasing and Australia is becoming a more multicultural society. These and other changes in those socio-cultural forces bring about unique problems and opportunities for marketers. Changes in social and cultural values have dramatically influenced people's needs and desires for products, and these values change at varying speeds. Issues of health, nutrition, and exercise have increased in importance, affecting behaviour, lifestyles, and product choices. So it's about being aware of all of these elements that's happening in our environment or in our socio-cultural mix on how we go about selling our products. We then also need to take into consideration our technological forces, and this is the application of knowledge and tools to solve problems and perform tasks more efficiently. Technology determines how society satisfies its psychological needs, such as improving communication. Technology can also help marketers and consumers become more productive, but it also raises controversial issues, such as AI. So the effects of technology relate to such characteristics as dynamics, reach, and the self-sustaining nature of technological process. The dynamics of technology involve the constant change that often challenges the structures of social institutions. Reach refers to the broad nature of technology as it moves through society. The self-sustaining nature of technology relates to the fact that technology acts as a catalyst to spur even faster development. It's really important for firms to determine when a technology is changing an industry and to define the strategic influence of the new technology. Through technology assessment, managers try to foresee the effects of new products and processes on the organisation's operations, on other business organisations, and on society in general. Our next area that we need to look at, so we've had a look at our forces, so our socio-cultural forces, our economic forces, our competitive forces, and our political forces. Now we're going to have a look at regulation and self-regulation or regulation industries, because there are a number of federal laws that influence marketing decisions and activities. Federal regulatory agencies influence many marketing activities, including product development, pricing, packaging, advertising, personal selling, and distribution. And they often have the power to enforce specific laws. They have some discretion to establish operating rules and regulations to guide industry practices and protect consumers. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, or the ACCC, is an example of a federal regulatory agency. They are Australia's national competition, consumer, fair trading and product safety regulator. All states, as well as many cities and towns, have regulatory agencies that enforce laws and regulations regarding marketing practices within their states or different areas. So some of the things that we look at there when it comes to the laws that influence our marketing decisions and activities is, for example, with the advertising around alcohol and gambling, is that we can't be we're not specific. The idea around that is that advertising isn't designed to be seen by people under the age of 18, because you're not supposed to be able to subscribe to those two substances. However, though, there's a few little loose loopholes there where we have advertising of alcohol and gambling in sport, and of course we know a lot of young people watch sport. There's also where there's federal regulatory agencies have ensuring that, alcohol actually says that not to be consumed by persons under the age of 18. Tobacco, again, has similar laws, and the packaging of tobacco actually states, you've got those horrible pictures on your packets of cigarettes here in Australia, which isn't something that happens anywhere else in the world. So we need to be aware of some of our federal laws as well as our local laws that may be impacting what we can sell and how we go about selling it. Move on. But in an attempt to be good corporate citizens and to prevent government intervention, some businesses try to regulate themselves. And it's established to stop or stall the development of laws and governmental regulatory groups that would regulate marketing practices. And this is exactly the case when it comes to gambling and alcohol. They're both self-regulatory. And that's now why with a lot of gambling ads, you will see that where they'll actually say, hey, if you've got a problem, here's who you should contact. Establishment and implementation of self-regulation groups are definitely less expensive, and the guidelines can be a little bit more realistic and operational. Hence, then, the reduced need to expand into government bureaucracy, because that is definitely not something that we want to do. Several trade associations have also developed self-regulatory programs. So although self-regulatory programs are not a direct outgrowth of laws, many were established to stop or stall the development of laws and government regulatory groups that would regulate those associations' marketing practices. So as we've just spoken about, some of the advantages of self-regulation include the establishment and implementation is usually less expensive, and the guidelines are just a little bit more realistic and operational. In addition, effective self-regulatory programs reduce the need to expand into that government bureaucracy. However, there are also a couple of limitations. And that is when a trade association creates a set of industry guidelines for its members, non-member firms do not have to abide by those guidelines. And many self-regulatory programs lack the tools or authority to enforce those guidelines. And guidelines in self-regulatory programs are often less strict than those established by government agencies, because after all, they're guidelines, they're not laws or rules. So which then leads us into looking at social responsibility and our ethics when it comes to marketing. So in marketing, social responsibility refers to an organization's obligation to maximize its positive impact and minimize its negative impact on society. It deals with the total effect of all marketing decisions on society. Evidence demonstrates that ignoring stakeholder demands for responsible marketing can destroy customer trust and even prompt government regulations. Socially responsible activities can generate positive publicity and boost sales. Socially responsible efforts have a positive effect on local communities and indirectly help the sponsoring organisation by attracting goodwill, publicity, and potential customers and employees. Socially responsible organisations strive for marketing citizenship by adopting a strategic focus for fulfilling the economic, legal, ethical and philanthropical social responsibilities that their stakeholders expect of them. Companies that consider the diverse perspectives of stakeholders in daily operations and strategic planning are said to have what's called stakeholder orientation. And stakeholder orientation goes beyond our customers, competitors, and regulators to understand and address the needs of all stakeholders, and that includes our communities and special interest groups. The economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropical dimensions of social responsibility can be viewed as a pyramid, and this has been taken as figure 2.1, or it doesn't say figure 2.1 on there, but this has been taken from the textbook, and there is more information about that. But we're going to look at those 4 areas in a little bit more detail now. If we want to move on, there we go. So when we're looking at our economic dimension, that means that all companies have an economic responsibility to be profitable so as they can provide a return on investment to their owners and investors, create jobs for the community, and contribute goods and services to the economy. And as we've spoken about, We need to be making money if we're going to be in business. The economic dimension also is how organisations relate to stockholders, employees, competitors, customers, the community, and the natural environment that affects the economy. Marketers also have an economic responsibility to compete fairly. And there is legal requirements around this if you look at the ACCC website. Large firms often can generate economies of scale that allow them to put smaller firms out of business. And we don't really like to do that. We can do that, it happens. It's just all part of being in business. But of course, if we can try to work with other businesses, hey, well then, we're being good corporate citizens, really, aren't we? So then second dimension is that legal dimension. And that is, of course, marketers are expected to obey all the laws and regulations that we do have in place. The efforts of elected representatives and special interest groups to promote responsible corporate behaviour have resulted in laws and regulations designed to keep companies' actions within a range of acceptable conduct. So we look at things there such as the ACCC, consumer law, and those types of things. So when marketers engage in deceptive practices to advance their own interests over those of others, they might actually be charged with fraud. And in general, fraud is any purposeful communication that deceives, manipulates, or conceals facts in order to create a false impression. It's considered a crime, and convictions may result in fines, imprisonment, or both. So as marketers, it is really, really important. It is the law that we cannot mislead anybody with our marketing and with our advertising. And we also need to be ethical as well. So the economic and legal responsibilities, they're at the most basic levels of our social responsibility. Beyond these dimensions is marketing ethics, and that's the principles and standards that define acceptable conduct in marketing as determined by the stakeholders, including the public, government, regulators, private interest groups, consumers, industries, and the organisation itself. The most basic ethical principles have been codified as laws and regulations to encourage conformity into society's expectations of conduct. But marketing ethics goes a bit beyond legal issues. Ethical marketing decisions foster trust, and that helps us build long-term marketing relationships. Marketers need to be aware of ethical standards for acceptable conduct from several viewpoints: the company, industry, government, customers, special interest groups, and society at large. When managers engage in activities that deviate from accepted principles, continued marketing exchanges become more difficult, if not impossible, because we've lost trust. The best time to deal with such problems is during the strategic planning process, not after major problems materialise. So an ethical issue is an identifiable problem, situation, or opportunity requiring an individual or the organisation to choose from among several different actions that must be evaluated as right or wrong, ethical or unethical. At any time, an activity causes marketing managers or customers in their target market to feel manipulated or cheated, a marketing ethical issue exists, regardless of the legality of that activity. Regardless of the reasons behind specific ethical issues, marketers must be able to identify these issues and decide how to resolve them. To do so requires familiarity with many kinds of ethical issues that may arise in marketing. And really, I think one of the best ways to test this is what's called the pub test. So if you were to bring it up at the pub, what would the general public say? So that's a term we use in Australia quite often, is the pub test. What would the general population think? Does it meet the pub test standards if we were to do such a thing? Finally, we have at the very top of our pyramid are our philanthropical responsibilities. Goodness me, so much talking. Now, our philanthropic responsibilities, they go beyond marketing ethics, and they're not required of a company at all. But companies do it because it promotes human welfare or goodwill, as do the economical, legal, and ethical dimensions of social responsibility. More and more companies are starting to adopt a strategic approach to corporate philanthropy. oh my gosh, I'm losing my tongue at the moment. Philanthropic, and many firms link their products to a particular social cause or on an ongoing or short-term basis. And this is a practice that's known as cause-related marketing. Some companies are beginning to extend the concept of corporate philanthropy beyond financial contributions and adopting that strategic philanthropy approach. Philanthropy, oh my gosh, that's the word. Philanthropy approach, the synergistic use of organizational core competencies and resources to address key stakeholder interests and to achieve organizational and social benefits. It's philanthropic and philanthropy. Okay, I've got it now. Strategic philanthropy involves employees, organizational resources and expertise, and the ability to link these assets to the concerns of key stakeholders, including employees, customers, suppliers, and social needs. Strategic philanthropy involves both financial and non-financial contributions to stakeholders. So that could be like employee time, goods and services, company tech and equipment, as well as facilities. But it also benefits the company as well. So it could be that we're donating food, leftover food, to homeless shelters. It might be that we're extending use of our boardroom to a community group for them to use it. It may be that we're allowing employees in their work time to actually go out and to assist with a charitable organisation that they're part of. So there's a lot of elements now where organisations are thinking about the philanthropic need, or including the philanthropy as part of their strategic direction. So, oh my goodness, that word gets me every time. So let's move away now from looking at our social responsibility pyramid and look at one of the other ways where marketers demonstrate social responsibility, and that's through sustainability, and that's through programs that we have that are designed to protect and preserve the natural environment. Many companies now engage in recycling activities and make significant efforts to reduce waste and conserve energy. Many companies are making contributions to environmental protection organisations. They're sponsoring and participating in cleanup events, promoting recycling, retooling manufacturing processes to minimise waste and pollution. They're employing more environmentally friendly energy sources, and generally reevaluating the effects their products have on the natural environment. This approach to the environment is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So if we consider consumerism, it consists, gone too far, come back here. So consumerism consists of organised efforts by individuals, groups and organisations seeking to protect consumer rights. The movement's major forces are individual consumer advocates, consumer organisations and other interest groups, consumer education and consumer law. To achieve their objectives, consumers and their advocates write letters or send emails to companies. They lobby government and agencies, broadcast public service announcements, and boycott companies whose activities they deem to be irresponsible. Some consumers actually choose to boycott firms and products out of desire to support a particular cause and to make a difference. I know one area where I do that is I try really hard to buy Australian made product, and particularly locally produced product. So it's not so much boycotting something, it's just that I don't see the need to endorse farmers overseas when the farmers that we have locally here in Australia are doing it pretty tough. So that's one of that's one of the areas that you might be considering using consumerism. So although the concepts of marketing ethics and social responsibility are often used interchangeably, it's important to distinguish between the two of them. So ethics relates to judgments about what's right or what's wrong in a particular decision-making situation. So sort of what's your gut feel on that? Whereas social responsibility deals with the total effect of marketing decisions on society. Because ethics and social responsibility programs can be profitable, many companies are incorporating them into their strategic marketing planning. But without compliance programs and uniform standards and policies regarding conduct, it's really hard for companies' employees to determine what conduct is acceptable. To improve ethics, many organisations have developed codes of conduct, or else they might also be called codes of ethics. And this consists of formalised rules and standards that describe what each firm expects of its employees. These codes promote ethical behaviour by reducing opportunities for unethical behaviour, because employees know both what is expected of them and what the consequences might be if they violate those rules. Codes also help us as marketers deal with any ethical issues that develop in our daily operations by prescribing or limiting specific activities. It's really important that companies consistently enforce these standards and impose penalties or punishments on those that violate those codes of conduct. Because, of course, boundaries is really important. Because to succeed, a compliance program must be viewed as part of the overall marketing strategic implementation. If there's not going to be any punishment if you don't adhere to those standards, then why have them in the first place? Being socially responsible relates to doing what is economically sound, legal, ethical, and socially conscious. A rule of thumb for resolving ethical and social responsibility issues is if an issue can withstand open discussion that results in agreement or limited debate, such as the pub test, an acceptable solution might exist. So crew, we got to the end. So by now you should have a good understanding and be able to explain why it is important to examine and respond to the marketing environment. You are able to understand the nature and types of changes to the marketer's environment, and that's looking at the competitive, economic, political, legal and regulatory, technological and sociocultural forces that impact the marketing environment. You should now be really aware of the legal and regulatory forces that guide marketers and understand the difference between self-regulation and legal regulation, and why some firms might choose that self-regulation. You should now be able to describe the 4 dimensions of social responsibility, which is economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic. And you should also be able to explain how to incorporate ethics and social responsibility into your marketing strategy. So crew, thank you so very much. I look forward to seeing you in the workshop that's coming up. Oh, if I have you in the workshop, that is. But let me know if there's any comments or questions about what we've gone through here in week 3. Now, as I said, everything here has come out of chapter 2 of the textbook. So I invite you to review that as well as to support your learning and going deeper in this particular topic. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.